Well, folks, here we are today. We are going through a bunch of movies that are considered sort of classics. Some are actual classics. These are movies that would not be made today because they are too controversial. This video is sponsored by Genucel. Very first on our list, Tropic Thunder, 2008. Amazing this was ever made. Like, truly amazing. And with the cast, really, really amazing. You're talking like Ben Stiller, Robert Downey Jr., Jack Black, Tom Cruise in his best part as Les Grossman.
Take a big step back and literally your own face!
Matthew McConaughey, Jay Baruchel. Like, the cast on this thing is extraordinary. Nick Nolte is there for like a hot second. And of course, there are many things about this movie that could not be made. The two most prominent things about this movie are Robert Downey Jr. playing a white actor who is playing a black man, even though the entire joke of the film is that he's a method actor. And so everybody is making fun of him the whole film for pretending to be a black guy, and he's taking it super seriously because he is a method actor.
Whoa, is that blackface, dude? Get the out, man.
You know what? That, man. I'm sick of this koala hugging telling me
For 400 years, that word has kept us down.
What the
Took a whole lot of time just to get up that hill. Now we up in the big leagues. Kid, not turn it back. Long as we live, it's you and me, baby.
That's the theme song for the Jeffersons. You really need help.
And just because the theme song don't make it not true.
Robert Downey Jr. I can't remember. Did he win a Best nomination? I think he won a Best Supporting nomination for this, I think. Yeah, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Because remember, this is the pre-Obama era. It's 2008. Obama was running. And we all thought, like, post-racial America is here. Robert Downey Jr. can be nominated for an Oscar for playing a white guy, pretending to be a black guy, and we can all laugh about it. And then Barack Obama made things so much worse. He made things so much worse on this front. It's insane.
I'm sorry.
Next, our friend Rob Schneider in Hot Chick with Rachel McAdams. And it is amazing to see, like, what the log lines were for people who have now become, like, major forces in Hollywood. Like, Rachel McAdams is now an incredibly famous actress who's been, like, a lot of things. But she was in Hot Chicks, which is hysterical. This movie is about an attractive and popular teenager who's mean-spirited toward others and then is transformed into an older man. And she has to learn to be nice by looking like Rob Schneider. Here it comes.
All right, next movie. I know you know about this one.
Another amazing classic of the genre, Blazing Saddles, 1974, Mel Brooks.
What do you want?
The basic plot line of the movie is that there is a bad, corrupt politician who appoints a black sheriff in order to destroy this western town, like basically hollow out the western town so that it can be easily taken over by the railroad. That's essentially the plot line of the movie, and then the actual movie has nothing to do with anything and is hysterically funny.
Hey, boys! Look what I got here!
Hey, where are the white women at?
They're doing that so that they can take their KKK costumes off of them. That's the joke.
Man, that was pretty. I like that.
The whole point of the jokes is that racism is bad. But are you allowed to tell jokes about racism where racism is bad? Who knows? Airplane came out in 1980. It stars Robert Hayes. It stars Leslie Nielsen. It stars Lloyd Bridges and Julie Haggerty. And it is one of the funniest movies ever made. It would not be made today because it is filled with really edgy jokes ranging from religion to race. Pretty much everything gets hit in Airplane. And we're not allowed to make jokes anymore. This is like the key example of you're not allowed to make jokes anymore because this movie is super duper funny.
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive.
Oh, good.
He said that he's in great pain and he wants to know if you can help him.
All right. Would you tell him to just relax and I'll be back as soon as I can with some medicine?
Just hang loose, blood. She's gonna catch up on the rebound on the med side.
What it is, Big Mama? My mama raised no dummies. I duck her rap.
Cut me some slack, Jack. Chump don't want to help. Chump don't get the help.
Say can't hang, say 7-Up.
Jive ass dude don't got no brains anyhow.
Okay, what makes that joke funnier is that you can watch that now and it's still pretty funny. Also, that is Beaver Cleaver's mother, like from Leave It to Beaver. I know David Zucker, who made that movie. And like, this is a time when it was a better country. I'm just telling you, it was. Like, people used to see that sort of stuff, and black people would laugh at those jokes, and white people would laugh at those jokes, and then there'd be a joke about a white guy, and everybody would laugh about it. And it was a lot better.
Hey, look at me. I'm white.
Folks, as you might know, we are all fans of our friends over at Genucel. I've been using Genucel products since like 2013. So they used to advertise on this local radio show that I did back in LA. And then even after I wasn't doing that show anymore, members of my family just kept using Genucel products. My mom, my wife, and it's not just my family. Ella from Rockford says, I have both age and acne spots, and this stuff is actually fading both of them. This serum is worth every penny. Ella is raving about that famous dark spot corrector from Genucel. It's a must-have after months of record heat and humidity. Sunspots, brown spots, discoloration, even red inflamed patches, all will disappear in front of your very eyes. Here is the Genucel Amazing Guarantee. You will see results on day one or your money back, so it's risk-free. Take advantage of Genucel's most popular package, which now includes that dark spot corrector, plus the classic Genucel bags and puffiness treatment and immediate effects, all at about 70% off, so you can try the best skincare in the world for yourself, completely risk-free. It's simple. Just go to Genucel.com/Shapiro. Start looking years, even decades younger tomorrow. Say goodbye to dark and liver spots, bags and puffiness under the eyes, crow's feet at Genucel.com/Shapiro. That's Genucel.com/Shapiro. Go check them out right now. GENUCEL.com/Shapiro. Okay, our next entry is Juwanna Mann, which is a story about a star basketball player who decides to cross-dress as a woman and dominate the WNBA, which is a movie we're not allowed to make anymore, obviously.
I know this look freaky out, Ruby, but it's not what you think.
Well, it can't get much better than what I think.
Are you allowed to make fun of like the fact that women are not as good at basketball as men, and that like a random man can just play basketball with the women and dominate them? I don't know. Oh, white chicks. Yeah, this one's a classic. Honestly, you might be able to make white chicks today, as you're making fun of white people. You're allowed to do that.
White people having fun.
White chicks, you probably are able to get away with it because it's just making fun of how terrible white people are.
I know you hookers don't think this is over with. Let's kick it old school.
The white people love this stuff. Love the white people. Again, like I think this movie gets made now. This is the only movie in the list where I think probably they still make this movie.
Even with the female to male thing?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing, is that the thing you would think would be offensive about this movie is not the thing that would now be offensive about this movie. Okay, so this is 1986, Soul Man. The plot line is white guy wants to get into college and so applies as black guy.
Really unbelievable. So I went over to see Seth at his lab the
God.
other day, and he gave me these pills. Never take anything Seth gives you. They chemically tan your skin. Mark, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not tan. You're black.
I went to Harvard Law School, and affirmative action was still very much in action when I went to Harvard Law. So we wouldn't make that today, but also like the premise of it is not wrong. What's amazing is that was 86, and it took until 2023 for the Supreme Court to say that colleges should not be allowed to just give people money because they're black. That's like an amazing thing. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Savvy is so excited.
We should discuss how many times she brings it up on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, Savvy brings this up.
Okay, so this is Bill Gluckman.
Okay.
He's running for governor of California. And his son, Jamie Kennedy, basically wants to be a rapper and thinks he's black. His campaign staff hires 2 black actors, which are Taye Diggs and Anthony Anderson, fake kidnap him and take him to the hood on a ride around.
This thing made today. You are correct. That is a correct assessment of the situation. This is American Pie 1999. I'll be honest, I've never watched this movie all the way through, nor had I a desire to do so, but this is sort of like modern day Porky's, right? On the list of movies that can never get made, they always put like Porky's, and this is sort of like the updated version of Porky's, which is guys acting in terrible ways to girls, basically. This movie, I remember when it came out, and I remember it was a big thing when it came out, like a big controversy, and it kind of should have been, because you know what's super gross, like what happens right here.
Jim, there's a young lady here to see you.
Dad.
Well, I'll let you 2 hit the books.
It's my computer and I want to use it.
Shut up. You need to change, right?
Do you mind?
No, not at all. Please, just go ahead and
yeah,
get
non-consensual filming people.
I'll go downstairs and
pornography.
Studying up.
Yeah, this is bad. Okay. This is actually bad.
There he goes. Now we're in business.
Did I miss anything?
No. You were just in time.
Oh, God bless the internet.
So this would be a violation of law, privacy, and everything decent. So to be fair, I feel like this never should have been made. But Hollywood thought it was okay at the time, by the way. This is why when Hollywood was lecturing us all about Me Too, it's like, you just go shut the f up. Like, for literally decades, you guys were the Me Too people. Like, just cut it out. Alrighty, folks, if there are movies that we missed that you'd like for us to comment upon, you know, the movies that would be unmakeable today, share them in the comments below. Every piece of breaking news, every show, every reaction, it's all possible because of support from our members. Join us now as we fight the left and build the future. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code FIGHT for 47% off. Fox News just called it. It's over, gang. Yeah. It's over. Fox News calls Pennsylvania. This election is done. It's toast. You can put it in the fridge. It's finished.
Donald Trump
is your 47th president of the United States, the greatest political comeback in American history. Bar none. Yeah. No doubts about it. Un-effing believable. Unbelievable. And to you, the American people, put the work in. The amount of work that people put into this election cycle, particularly me, but others. It doesn't work. You got it. It's incredible. Really, like I mean, the amount of work. I mean, the number of people that we all personally know who are like door knocking and going out and doing the hard work and making the connections, putting aside whatever differences are out there. I mean, this is a huge victory against a woke left that needed to take it directly in the teeth.
This is
just huge, just enormous.
This is the greatest comeback, without dispute, in the history of American politics.
TDHQ has called the election. Donald Trump is your 47th president of the United States.
Yes!
There it is.
Yes! Damn. All right.
So, well, the world is about to change in a much better way, much better way, from foreign policy to domestic policy to the social fabric of the country. And now it's time for those that Donald John Trump has defeated to actually take seriously the possibility they got it all wrong. They got it all wrong. And it's time to rethink some things about the American people and about the country they seem to say that they ought to represent.
It is also time for me to have a drink. I think I've
you've heard it. And Dennis Prager left early.
No!
Oh, boy.
Now we have to have his drink. I mean, if we must.
You know, the nice thing about the color orange is that it encompasses so many colors. It's not just white. It's not just black.
It's really
not
a blending
just brown. It's a blended family. It's like America.
Rainbow coming together.
That's
like
exactly
Obama said.
right.
We're not red America. We're not white.
We're orange America.
Orange America.
Today we're all orange. That's right. It's been a long road.
United States of America.
The United States of America.
And number 47.
And number 47.
Donald Trump. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Folks, do you owe back taxes? Don't gamble with the IRS. It's a no-win. Tax Network USA is on your side. Their attorneys and expert negotiators use aggressive strategies to settle your IRS issues fast and in your favor. They've saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. For a free and private consultation with a tax professional that knows how to win, call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/react. Contact Tax Network USA today. Put your tax worries behind you. Again, if you got a tax problem, go get it solved today. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit our friends at Tax Network USA at tnusa.com/react. We were 1 centimeter away from things completely exploding, not just Trump's head.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, that is how close this country just came. The person that a bullet missed his head by this much is now the next president of the United States again. Okay, I'm sorry. If you don't believe in God, it's time to start thinking about it really a lot, like real strong. You might want to take like a real strong think on that one. You know, last time in 2016, I had to pay Michael because I bet wrong on the election. This time I called it. I called it this time, so I don't have to pay you
Except
any more
remember
money.
that bet we had on New Hampshire? you were a little tired.
Yeah, he was. I remember.
It was about $400.
I was more right than wrong. That's all I'll say.
Wow.
Okay, guys, we need clips from MSNBC. Feed it into my veins. I need it from MSNBC right now. CNN, MSNBC, all the networks into my veins.
Thank you, sir.
Slow drip for the rest of my life.
By the way,
right
can we
now.
also say it's not going to, electorally speaking, the popular vote I don't know because California is a big state.
Yes.
But Donald Trump is going to win 300 electoral votes.
He's going to win the popular. I'm just telling you right now, he's going to win the popular vote.
He is going to win the vote.
He's going to win the popular vote. He's going to win the popular vote because she is. They're not showing up for her and they're showing up for him.
And
he's going to win the popular. You know how crazy this ride has been? This is a crazy ride. I mean, just like to recap, for those who may have been asleep the last 10 years like Joe Biden, Donald Trump was elected in what was probably the greatest electoral fluke of our lifetime in 2016 by, 77,000 votes in 3 separate states after losing the popular vote by like 6 million votes. Yeah. And then we had a pandemic in his election year with massive riots.
Right.
And he lost to Joe Biden by 7 million popular votes, and he lost by a handful of votes in a bunch of separate states. He then proceeded to be prosecuted 4 times after having been impeached twice, nearly assassinated twice in the last year, had the candidate he was beating swapped out for another candidate. The entire media then sided behind that candidate, and then he won anyway. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there again. Folks, if you ain't going to synagogue or church, you really ought to re-examine your perception of the way that God moves through history, because my goodness gracious. Who are the 5 worst presidents in American history? Now, you've heard a lot of historians sound off on this, and they'll give you names like Donald Trump, George W. Bush. That's because they're partisan hats. We're going to talk about the 5 real worst presidents in American history. 5th worst president, Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter?
Jimmy who?
I don't know who he is.
So Jimmy Carter actually kind of pales in comparison to the other 4 because he only had 1 term to ruin America. But everybody remembers stagflation, really, really high levels of inflation and stagnation, huge unemployment rates, 8, 9, 10%, inflation rates, 14%, massive gasoline shortages, gas lines, the Iranian Revolution, which he sort of backed. I mean, he let the Shah fall, leading to the Iran hostage crisis of 1979 to 1980. He entered the presidency, pledging to reverse our, quote, inordinate fear of communism, and the Soviet Union took him up on that, then invading Afghanistan. That's all the stuff he did while he was president, but he wasn't president for that long. He was president for 4 years and 4 years only. He was a horrible post-president. He built some houses for homeless people.
Look, it's Jimmy Carter.
That's great. He also hung out with Hamas and actively wrote speeches for Uber-terrorist Yasser Arafat, claiming that Hamas's election was actually legitimate. He opposed U.S. intervention in the Gulf War in Kuwait. He actively wrote letters to other members of the UN Security Council asking them to vote against the United States. That's wild. He helped broker the North Korean nuclear deal that eventually led to North Korea gaining nuclear weapons. So, terrible, terrible ex-president. Probably a worse ex-president than he was even as president, which is saying a lot because he was a real crap president. Barack Obama clocks in on this list at number 4.
Thank God for Obama, because at least now, they know Kenya.
No. Please don't bring up Obama.
To understand what a bad president Barack Obama is, you have to understand Trump is an outgrowth of Barack Obama. He's a reaction to Obama. And then Biden is a reaction to Trump. So if you're going to talk about where American politics truly went completely off the rails, the answer is Barack Obama. Barack Obama came into office as a unifier.
I'm so excited because we are going to change the world.
And then he proceeded to radically divide the American population. You can see it in the polling data. 72% of white adults thought race relations were good in 2013. So did 66% of black people. By 2015, that number was 51% of blacks and 45% of whites. Barack Obama's racial polarization was dramatic. He presided over race riots in Ferguson and Baltimore. He promoted the lie that police officers all over the United States are racist, contributing to the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, raising crime rates around the country.
These young men are incredibly angry.
He presided over the weakest economic recovery in modern American history because his decision was he was going to spend endless amounts of money and regulate the living hell out of the economy. The Congressional Budget Office initially said that Obamacare would cost $940 billion. It has now been estimated it will cost $1.7 trillion. Life expectancy in the United States in 2010, when Obamacare kicked in, was 78.54. Today, it is 77.28. So, nailed it with Obamacare. He polarized the country on social issues, including, most prominently, same-sex marriage, where he simply decided to reverse his position from 2008 on same-sex marriage and declare that everybody who actually held his position from 2008 was an evil, bigot, terrible person.
Marriage is between a man and a woman.
He utilized the IRS to target his political opponents. He weaponized the DOJ under both Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. He presided over the use of the FBI to target Donald Trump in the 2016 election. On the foreign policy front, he alienated traditional allies like Israel, sending pallets of cash to America's enemies like Iran. He basically ceded all of Crimea to Russia and then ceded leadership in Syria to Russia. He destabilized the Middle East by backing the Arab Spring, radically pulled American troops out of Iraq and led to the rise of ISIS. And by the way, he spent more money than all prior 43 presidents combined.
So let's see if my credit card still works.
So, yeah, terrible, terrible president. Third worst president of all time, most people label him the first, but I actually don't think he matches up, is James Buchanan. Saying that James Buchanan is the worst president of all time is a little much, considering that it would have been on him to stop the Civil War from happening. James Buchanan, in the lead up to the Civil War, endorsed the view that whatever the Supreme Court said about slavery would be obeyed. He actually knew the outcome of Dred Scott, which essentially ruled that black people were not citizens of the United States and could not be citizens of the United States beforehand when he said that. He was a Pennsylvania Democrat, very, very sympathetic to Southern slavery positions. In his inaugural address, he called the issue of slavery, quote, happily a matter of but little practical importance. Wrong. He actually said that while secession was illegal, the government didn't have the power to stop it, which led a lot of states to be like, okay, well, then I guess we can leave. Again, could he have prevented the Civil War from happening right then? Maybe. Although, obviously, the circumstances were building toward the Civil War pretty clearly. That's the only reason I don't have Buchanan as like number one on this list of crappy presidents. We'll get to more of this in just 1 second. First, for the 5th consecutive year, abortion remains the world's leading cause of fetus mortality, even despite the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Tragically, it's been reported that the number of infant deaths caused by abortion is greater than the number of deaths attributed to the next 7 causes of death combined. Preborn is leading the charge to turn this around. Every day, Preborn's network of clinics rescues 200 unborn babies. By introducing a mom to her child via ultrasound, a baby's chance of survival could double. Preborn's work has only begun. By the time I finish this life-saving message, 2 unborn babies will be aborted in this country. Will you join Preborn and make 2024 the biggest baby-saving year in history? One ultrasound is just $28, $140 will offer 5 babies a chance at life. Just dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or donate securely at preborn.com/Ben. That's preborn.com/Ben. Start saving babies today. Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Ben.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, his marching on.
Second worst president of all time, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Utter disaster area. Literally the only good mark on LBJ's record is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Those are the only good marks. The big boo-boos for LBJ, the Great Society. So the Great Society was an attempt to, quote, fight the war on poverty. This amounted to spending trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars, making government encroach into nearly every area of American life, offering subsidies, threatening prosecutions and fines. Government offered, instead of prosperity, the prospect of intergenerational poverty through sponsorship of single motherhood, through welfare programs that disincentivized marriage. The black single motherhood rate in 1960 was under 20%, and the black single motherhood rate today is above 70%. The black middle class actually expanded way faster before the Great Society programs than they did after. According to the Cato Institute's Michael Tanner, between 1963 and 2010, the federal government spent $13 trillion fighting poverty. The poverty rate, by the way, in 2012 was 15%, slightly higher than it was in 1966. So you spent $13 trillion to increase the poverty rate. You got America deeply involved in the war in Vietnam, most disastrous war in American history. Even if you believe that we should have been involved in the war in Vietnam, if you're going to go in, you go in with overwhelming force, and you break things, and you win the war. That is not what LBJ did. He presided over serious racial unrest. Christopher Caldwell writes in his book, The Age of Entitlement, the changes of the 1960s, with civil rights at their core, were not just a major new element in the Constitution. They were a rival constitution, with which the old one was frequently incompatible. The federal government was given extraordinary power to end discrimination, both real and imagined, both in the private sector and in the public sector. As Caldwell writes, when instances of racism couldn't provide the proper pretext for government interventionism, the rubric of anti-discrimination was expanded to include any supposedly victimized minority group. So this paves the way for the LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign movement. The civil rights models of executive order, litigation, court-ordered redress eventually became the basis for government to do what the Constitution would previously not have permitted.
In 1913, Woodrow Wilson takes us into World War I.
The worst president in American history, bar none, Woodrow Wilson. First of all, he was an authoritarian. He actually wrote, quote, "The president is at liberty, both in law and conscience, to be as big a man as he can. His capacity will set the limit." He actually believed that the presidency of the United States was really the only branch that ought to matter. The idea is that experts in the executive would be able to do things and react more quickly than the antiquated checks and balances of the Constitution. On the moral level, Wilson was just craptastic. He was a fan of eugenics. He actually pushed for compulsory sterilization of people with Down syndrome in 1907, before he was president. He even signed a compulsory sterilization bill while he was governor of New Jersey in 1911. Famously, he promised to keep America out of the war in his re-elect effort in 1916, then got America involved in World War I by helping to blockade Germany. And then when Germany attacked American shipping, got America directly involved in World War I. His attempts to broker a peace at the Versailles Conference ended in utter disaster and probably paved the way for World War II. He curbed civil liberties via his Attorney General, A. Mitchell Palmer, and he helped press forward the Sedition Act of 1918. That actually made it a crime for American citizens to, quote, print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing about the government. Wildly unconstitutional. He nationalized major American industries, including the telegraph industry, the telephone industry, railroad industry. He created a massive economic recession that actually developed into an outright economic crisis in 1920. On the racial front, disaster area. He resegregated the federal services. He presided over major race riots. He showed Birth of a Nation at the White House and called it writing history with lightning. And by the last couple of years of his administration, he was not even in charge of his own administration. His brain was actually non-functional, and it was Edith Wilson who was actually governing the country at that point. So a terrible president, economically terrible president, terrible wartime president, terrible president on race, terrible president in terms of structuring a massive federal bureaucracy. Just a horrific president, Woodrow Wilson. If somebody says, George W. Bush was the worst president ever, really? Did George W. Bush show Birth of a Nation at the White House and stand for eugenics and get us into World War I leading to World War II and also declare himself kind of a dictator? Did he do those things? No. His two big failings, the Iraq War and the economic crisis of 2007, 2008, that crisis was not of his making. That came from the Clinton administration. It was their attempt to push subprime mortgages down on the banks and allow bad borrowers to take the money. As far as the Iraq War had wide bipartisan support. And then there's Trump. When people say that Trump was the worst president ever, what they're really referring to is his rhetoric, the bad tweets, whatever kind of weird stuff he was saying that day. But in terms of policy, not even close. Trump presided over a massively booming economy. He put conservatives on the Supreme Court to actually reestablish the checks and balances set up by the Constitution. He helped actually broker peace in the Middle East, which used to be a Nobel Prize thing, and now everybody just ignores because Trump did it. He kept Russia and China largely in check. He's the first president in my lifetime who didn't get America involved directly in a foreign war. The notion that Trump is even remotely near the top of the list of worst presidents ignores a lot of very, very bad presidents. Alrighty, folks, it's time for another episode of Ben Reacts, thanks to President Joe Biden, who tonight pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, in the most expected scandal of recent memory. Remember, folks, don't miss out on breaking news and exclusive content like these React videos. Join Daily Wire Plus today during our best deal of the year. Right now, you get 50% off new memberships. No code necessary. It is indeed the final hours of our Black Friday deal. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe right now. Alrighty, so the big news of the evening, of course, is that President Joe Biden, who had vowed that he would not, in fact, pardon his son, Hunter Biden, on gun and tax-related charges, he was lying. Who knew? Except for everyone, because, of course, President Joe Biden has always been a super corrupt and venal politician. In fact, from the very beginning of his career, he was attempting to make money for members of his family, whether we were talking about his brothers, whether we were talking about his kids, whether we were talking about his sister, whether we were talking about his entire family. His entire family has been the beneficiary of his political largesse. They've all used his name in order to pull down sacks of cash, and Hunter Biden, of course, was most famous for doing that, whether he was pulling down sacks of cash by taking money from Ukrainian energy company Burisma, having no expertise in Ukraine or in energy, whether he was attempting to take down sacks of cash from the Chinese with 10% held in trust for the big guy. That is according, again, to contemporaneous emails that were found on the Hunter Biden laptop, which were then covered up by the media and, of course, by the intelligence community, which claimed that it was probably Russian disinformation. Well, you'll recall that last year there was a huge scandal because the special counsel, a person named David Weiss, first attempted to bury the Hunter Biden charges, particularly when it came to the question of Foreign Agent Registration Act violations, tax felonies, whether Joe Biden was in fact involved in all of this. He attempted a plea deal with Hunter Biden that would have allowed him to get off scot-free, essentially, with some probation and some community service. And then he attempted to bury the tax charges in the gun charges. In the end, the judge blew that up because the judge looked at the deal and realized that the deal was in fact unbelievably corrupt, and there was no way to even pretend that it wasn't. So in the end, David Weiss and company at the DOJ, they had to go back to the drawing board, and eventually the judge in that particular case accepted a guilty plea in a 9-count indictment, 3 felony tax offenses, 6 misdemeanor tax offenses, as well as a gun charge because he had lied on his gun intake form. He had suggested that he was not, in fact, a drug addict when he was, in fact, a drug addict. Now, again, those convictions did not get to the root of the matter with regard to Hunter Biden, which was he, in fact, a bag man for daddy? I mean, we have texts from Hunter Biden to his own children suggesting that he paid the family bills. So the chances that he was not, in fact, a bag man for the Biden family are pretty much zero. Everyone all over the world knew that daddy was the one with the weight, and they figured that by paying Hunter Biden, they would basically buy off daddy. This was always the bargain. Hunter Biden basically admitted as much. He went on national television, and he was asked whether he would have ever obtained any of these highly paid foreign jobs if not for his last name, and he said no. And he said no. Well, Hunter Biden, again, gets convicted. He goes to jail. That happens back in September. And part of the reason why this happened back in September is because, as you'll recall, there were still ongoing questions as to whether Donald Trump was going to go to jail. So one of the ways that the DOJ responded to allegations of impropriety and corruption in going after Donald Trump was to convict Hunter Biden, the president's son, on this variety of charges without ever touching Joe Biden. So the idea was the DOJ was definitely not corrupt because, after all, the DOJ went out of its way to go after the president's son, even if it was leaving the president of the United States alone. Well, Joe Biden, you'll remember back in July, suggested that if his son was in fact convicted, he would not pardon him. And then after his son was convicted, he still said that he would not pardon him. You remember this? Well, it turns out that he was lying all along. So tonight, we find out that he was not only pardoned on the charges for which he ended up being criminally convicted or pleading guilty, he was actually pardoned with regard to anything he did between period January 1, 2014 and December 1st, 2024, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, including any that have resulted in convictions by special counsel David C. Weiss. Okay, that is what Joe Biden issued tonight. So it is not just the stuff that he was actually guilty of. It is anything else, right? Any offenses that he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during that entire period. So that entire period, of course, would include pretty much everything related to the Burisma period, which was happening in 2015 and early 2016. Pretty incredible stuff right there. I mean, that is Joe Biden just taking himself off the hook by proxy. That's what that is. We'll get to Joe Biden's statement on the matter in one moment. First, when a big brand says free, what they really mean is see the fine print. There is no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free, of course, but you need to look deeper. You'll quickly realize that in order to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000, enroll in the $100 a month unlimited plan, and then pay the $35 activation fee. It's a lot of money for a free phone. You don't need to do any of that. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need. Plus, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys. You get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network right now. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switching is super simple. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro, you do get an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. Pure Talk is America's wireless company. Alrighty, so the actual statement that Joe Biden released is really self-serving, as you would imagine. I mean, of course, it has to be self-serving, given the fact that, of course, this is the president pardoning his own son. And understand the corruption here. The entire attempt to convict Hunter Biden was done as a balancing act in order to demonstrate that they were not, in fact, a tool of the Democratic administration. So their case was, we can prosecute Donald Trump willy-nilly, but we're not biased because we are also prosecuting Hunter. But Republicans were saying, well, yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, except that Joe is going to pardon Hunter the minute that he has the opportunity to do so. So it's all a fake. And Joe was like, no, I would never do that. I'm never going to. Well, it turns out we were all right. It was a fake. So Joe Biden puts out a statement and it says this, quote, "Today, I signed a pardon for my son Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making, and I kept my word, even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who are late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear Hunter was treated differently." Ah, yes, it turns out Joe Biden isn't doing this because Hunter is his son. It's because Hunter was unfairly victimized by the Department of Justice, unlike Donald Trump, who, of course, had the Department of Justice activated against him And Joe Biden said that he should, in fact, have the Department of Justice activated against him, while simultaneously the DOJ was openly stating that Joe Biden had committed crimes with regard to classified materials, but he was senile, so they wouldn't prosecute him. Remember, the selectivity tends to run in one particular direction. While the statement goes on, the charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the DOJ unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. That, of course, is not what the judge said. The judge, as you'll recall, in this case, looked at that plea deal, which effectively took the gun charges and then wrapped in all possible tax charges as sort of an addendum to the plea deal on the gun charges. And the judge looked at that and said, wait, I'm not even trying the tax charges. Why in the world would I sign off on a plea agreement that involves cases over which I am not presiding? That's crazy. So, once again, Joe Biden is lying. He says no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. There's been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. He's a victim. He is, Hunter. He spent his entire adult life being a derelict, a drug addict who sires children by random women and then ignores them for years on end, who sleeps with his brother's widow, who runs around the world picking up sacks of cash for his daddy. But don't worry, he's the victim here. In trying to break Hunter, says Joe, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. For my entire career, I've followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. No, we know perfectly well why you came to this decision, Mr. President. We totally get it. It's because you are super corrupt. That's the reason that you came to this particular decision. Listen, I get it, you're a dad, but also you happen to be a super corrupt dad. None of these excuses hold water, and you don't get to claim that you agree with the justice system while you simultaneously undermine it through one of the most corrupt pardons in American history right here, which is exactly what is happening. All right, folks, we're going to have a lot on this tomorrow morning, so you have to make sure that you tune into the show. I have a lot to talk about here that I'm not able to get to in the Ben Reacts, but I wanted to get this out quickly so you know at least my initial thoughts. We'll see you here next time. Or again, remember, right now, this is like your last moment to get that Black Friday deal. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe right now and get 50% off your new membership. Hey folks, it's July 4th, Independence Day, so my producers decided to chain me to a desk and then show me woke TikToks about July 4th. This video is sponsored by Provia.
You know what never ceases to amaze me is how many conservatives go around and essentially say, America was founded as a conservative Christian nation.
Basha, can you hear me?
And it's like, if you ever read a book in your life, ever, any book, George Washington, the Founding Fathers, John Adams, like Thomas Jefferson, like they all refer to themselves as like
Ryan.
And then when you look at their work, right, and like their letters to Britain, they would always write about how enlightened liberalism would free people and create a more liberated society where religion was no longer dominant. So like they would on religion in their letters. And it's like, I just see so many like conservatives be like, this is a Christian nation because our money says in God we trust. And then it's like, actually it didn't even say that. And like there was nothing religious about founding this nation. Like it was founded in rebellion to religious governments.
Oh my God, cholesterol.
There are so many things that are wrong with this. It's hard to know where to begin. So first of all, conservative doesn't have an S in the middle of it.
You got.
Then the notion that England was like a religious dictatorship is incredibly silly. England was not a religious dictatorship in 1776. That's absurd. I mean, it wasn't the French Revolution. The French Revolution actually was a rebellion in many ways against religion. The American Revolution 100% was not. She does not understand the difference between classical liberalism and modern liberalism, which is pretty obvious from her statements. They were enlightened liberals, which means they probably liked welfare. That is not what liberalism means. Liberalism of the time meant that they were in favor of things like freedom of speech and freedom of religious practice. However, all of the founding fathers, while they toyed with deism, fully believed in Judeo-Christian ethics and value systems. The notion that Thomas Jefferson was like in favor of same-sex marriage or abortion, or that George Washington was suddenly a proponent of left-wing social values is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face. The vast majority of the founding fathers actually were fairly religious people, and in fact, there were established religions in several states at the time of the founding. So the belief system that the American Revolution was somehow a revolution against religion itself or a revolution against Christian principles is really silly. The American Revolution was not fought on behalf of theocracy, but that's not what people mean when they say that America was founded as a Christian nation. What they mean is that the backdrop to all American morality was Judeo-Christian in nature, and that is true. It was true. It should still be true.
On July 4th, there will be no buying there will be no going nowhere. There will be no supporting of this motherfucking independence of this goddamn country. There will be nothing bought. Do you understand?
Don't tell me what to do.
It's about high time that this country really get their motherfucking act in order. And if we gotta collapse our own motherfucking economy in order for them to go ahead and realize how fucking pissed off we are, then so be it. So again, I must say, and I quote, on July 4th, we are not buying We're not going nowhere. We're not doing no motherfucking cookouts. We're not doing not a damn thing but staying in the motherfucking house and enjoying our damn day. We don't give a fuck about the damn national holiday because it isn't our holiday to celebrate. That's for black, white, gay, and straight. Bada bop boom pow.
You know, it'd be great is if these people did that all the time. Like, just stay in your houses and leave all of us alone. First of all, buy a nail clipper is what you need to buy. But then beyond that, I do love the idea that he's very, very upset about abortion. This wombless person. Those are the rules, though, is that if you're pro-abortion, then you can be a man who yells about it. If you're anti-abortion, then you have to be quiet about it, even if you have many, many children. So good stuff there.
Yes, I'm not an idiot.
We'll see about that. We'll see. We'll see.
I know that English is the language of America. But at the same time, don't you think it's a problem that almost 80% of America, of our country, literally only speaks English?
No.
Because if you don't think that's a problem, then you've never left America. Because I can tell you right now that it is very much a problem.
What the hell are you talking about?
At the bare minimum, we should be taught on a much higher level, at least 1 or 2 other languages. And then we get upset with tourists when they don't speak perfect English when they come here.
That's not true.
And it's just out of control because we as Americans, when we go to other countries, what language do we expect them to speak? Always English. Always.
Okay, so so many things. Yes, we speak English because that is, in fact, the language that we use in the United States. But it turns out that people all over the world use English. You know why? Because America is the most powerful force in the history of the world. And you know what was the most powerful force before that? The British Empire. And it turns out that millions of people over the course of human history have spoken English in foreign countries specifically because of the power of the British Empire. So yeah, they speak English because we kick ass. Am I offended when people who are tourists come here and they don't speak English? Well, no, I don't know. I've never understood that. Should we learn another language? Yeah, that'd be great. But why is she offended that people in America mostly only speak English? First of all, most people in America don't actually leave the country all that often. This is a big-ass country. We'll get to more of these woke TikTok idiots on July 4th in just 1 second. First, you know, these people can make you lose your hair. And if you're one of the American men and women dealing with premature hair thinning or hair loss, or you're scared about inheriting that thin look because it runs in the family, there is now a real solution that delivers on its promise without the harsh side effects, unwanted chemicals, and unpleasant smells. Provia Hair Care uses a safe, natural ingredient called Procapil to effectively target the 3 main causes of premature hair thinning and loss. Provia supports healthy scalp circulation and delivers nourishing nutrients to strengthen hair follicles and anchor them to your scalp. Provia guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower drain. Provia is effective for men and women of any age and safe on colored, treated, and styled hair. Provia works guaranteed or 100% of your money back. It is, in fact, that easy. Take advantage of Provia's exclusive introductory summer package at proviahair.com/Ben. Enter promo code Ben at checkout for an extra discount on your order. See results for yourself right now. Don't wait. That's proviahair.com/Ben. Again, proviahair.com/Ben. Stop struggling with hair loss and get it fixed. Go to proviahair.com/Ben today to get started.
We all should be boycotting the 4th of July this year. America does not deserve a birthday. Why? We've had 306 mass shootings this year. We have a rogue Supreme Court full of religious extremists who are actively taking away the rights of people. And we have 2 pathetic leaders of each party, one who's too stupid and weak to do anything, and the other who's an absolute grifter who wants to overturn democracy. Let's show this country why America does not deserve a birthday this year. Stitcher, duet this video and tell me why you are boycotting the 4th of July and use the hashtag #NoBirthdayUSA, or just comment below, because this country is a mess and we need to give them a message.
Wow, what a message. What a message. Oh, wow. First of all, we have not had 306 mass shootings this year. that is a wildly overbroad definition of what a mass shooting constitutes. But put aside the false stat that he is putting out there, the number of actual mass shootings that we would consider mass shootings in the United States, while each one is horrifying and evil and terrible, it's not even remotely close to hundreds of mass shootings. I assume the definition he's using is more than one person gets shot, which involves like every weekend in Chicago, multiple times. When he says that the Supreme Court is filled with religious extremists, name a case that they have ruled on the basis of their religion. He can't, because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And then his critiques of the various presidential candidates, I noticed my favorite part there is like his critique of Biden. He's like, these two old geriatrics, and one of them won't be my dictator. That's his critique of Biden, is why won't he be a dictator? And the other one hates democracy. I noticed that you're contradicting yourself. Like what you want from Joe Biden is to just ignore the law, and then you are upset because you think that Donald Trump is ignoring the law. This is a favorite bugaboo of mine. People on the left are like, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Why won't Joe Biden issue more executive orders? All right, guys.
Oh my God, I hope it fucking rains all night. Because if everyone's saying climate change, why are we popping fireworks? Why? Also, like, indigenous people had their lands fucking stolen and their children killed. So what are we celebrating? What are y'all celebrating? Y'all just want to have a barbecue? It's summertime. Just do that any other time. Like, why? What's going on?
What is the symbol that's hanging from her car? I don't even know what that is. I feel like there's some significance to that. Does she think that fireworks create global warming? Is that her hot take here? Because I'm not sure even global warming extremists think that fireworks are really one of the chief causes of global warming.
Smells like global warming.
She was complaining about stealing indigenous land. So here is the thing about this particular accusation. You know which tribes have taken land from other tribes? All of them. Forever. You're just mad that Western civilization won. But I don't see you giving up your apartment. Like, where do you live? I assume that you live on land that once didn't belong to people who looked exactly like you. I don't see you going back to the original inhabitants of that land from, 15,000 years ago and being like, their descendants, they should have this land. This is the most tiresome argument.
We talk a lot about how America was founded on racism, and people point to things like the Civil War and how the Confederate States wanted to secede from the Union in order to preserve the institution of slavery. People go even further back and talk about the Three-Fifths Compromise, which was a compromise to appease slaveholding states in their representation. We also talk about the Electoral College, which was also a method meant to appease slaveholding states. But we can go even further back, because all of those things happened post-1776, when America was already technically a country. But when we say America was founded on racism and the institution of slavery, we can look to 1775, when many people were very lukewarm about the idea of a revolution, and they weren't sure if they wanted to be independent from Britain. Until Britain gave slaves the option to join the British Army against the American revolutionists in exchange for their freedom, and white people got scared. And that was literally a catalyst for the American Revolution. Happy Black History Month.
Okay, that last part is just not true.
See, now that's some bullshit.
Okay, the notion that the founding fathers decided to fight a revolution because the British were going to free slaves against the revolutionaries, that's she's got her timeline mixed up. As far as the other stuff, the Three-Fifths Compromise was an attempt to claw back from Southern overrepresentation. Let's say that blacks had been counted as not 3/5 of a human being. They'd been counted as 5/5 of a human being, like a full human. They still wouldn't have been able to vote. It would have overrepresented Southern states by counting black people in their population, but not in their voting population, thus giving Southern states overrepresentation. She's forgetting the other half of the Civil War.
What's the other half?
Yes, there was, in fact, a large chunk of the country that wanted to cede over the issue of slavery. And then there was a larger chunk of the country that literally sent hundreds of thousands of men to die to free those slaves. So she seems to be forgetting about those people. Here's why you should celebrate the 4th of July. The 4th of July represents the establishment of the most powerful, greatest, and freest country in the history of the world that has spread freedom and prosperity to literally billions of people, including its own inhabitants, that has expanded rights to hundreds of millions of Americans living within our own borders and to people who live outside of our borders, that has propped up the global economy, that has raised half the global population out of abject poverty, that has assured the world's freedom from both communism and Nazism, and also, in many cases, from Islamic fascism. So, yeah, there are a lot of reasons to celebrate the United States. And if you don't celebrate the United States, I would suggest that you do it without the use of any of the technologies that you prize, without any of the prosperity that you rely upon, without your job, without your apartment, without any of the glories that the United States has given you. Because otherwise, you're being kind of ungrateful, don't you think? Alrighty, so we are here reacting to what was, in any normal circumstance, a car crash interview by Kamala Harris. Tim Walz was there as her emotional support animal, but he really didn't have any answers for anything. He kind of sat there silently. The entire setup of the interview was bizarre. Dana Bash did a horrifyingly bad job. She would ask a kind of tough question only to never follow it up, just abandon the thread. So there was no actual pushback when Kamala Harris or Tim Walz lied. Before we go any further, I want to remind you that we do have a special deal going on over at Daily Wire. We have a Labor Day deal. You get 40% off right now at our Labor Day sale. All you have to do is head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use promo code LABOR40 at checkout to get that special deal. Again, we're bringing you updates all throughout the election cycle. We can only do that because of your membership, so we really appreciate it. Okay, now back to the interview. There were a bunch of F-ups here by Kamala Harris that are going to be used in campaign ads. And that really is the measure of the interview, because as an interview, it was really boring. Not a lot happened, actually, during the interview. She word saladed a lot. She filibustered a lot. There was a lot of just mush mouth coming out of Kamala Harris. She looked kind of awkward. Her mannerisms, she looked like she was not comfortable being there. Tim Walz looked uncomfortable being there. She was clearly very nervous. She doesn't want to be in front of a camera answering actual questions. The very first question was, what are you going to do day one? And she didn't have an answer for that. She filibustered that answer. That's like the number one question every presidential candidate gets. How did she not have an answer for that? But that's not what's going to damage her. There are a couple of answers here that actually are going to damage her. The first answer that is going to be a real problem for her is she was asked about her constantly changing and vacillating positions. And they're all over the place. They're constantly changing, constantly vacillating. So she was specifically asked about fracking. And she said, well, I was against fracking, but then I changed my position in 2020. Now, remember, her campaign actually ended in 2019. It didn't make it to 2020. She changed her position because it wasn't Joe Biden's position when she was running for vice president. So she says, in 2019, I was against fracking. Then in 2020, I was pro-fracking. And believe you me, right now, I am definitely pro-fracking. And you can believe me because I'm saying so, because I changed then, but I won't change again. Bad answer, especially because she was asked by Dana Bash, why do you change your positions? Like, do you have any explanation for why these positions changed? And not only that, Dana Bash went further. Dana Bash, being a very kind and generous interviewer, which is to say, being in the pocket of the Harris-Walz campaign, she actually offered her multiple choice options. So she actually said to her, did you change your positions because you maybe evolved, or maybe because you learned new information? And Kamala Harris then completely avoided either of those answers, both of which are totally plausible on our multiple choice exam to be president of the United States. And instead, she went with, I haven't changed any of my values. That line is going to be at the center of a lot of attack ads from the Trump campaign because she hasn't changed her values. She has not. The Green New Deal is a radical piece of legislation. The Inflation Reduction Act is a radical piece of legislation. She was for open borders. She tried to bring herself off as a border hawk. And when she was asked about the open borders policy of the Biden administration for the first 3.5 years, she started talking about Donald Trump and how she was a prosecutor at one point. That dog is not going to hunt if somebody actually asks her an aggressive line of questioning. The question will be whether she does an interview ever again after this one. The other answer that I think is really going to harm her is her answer on Joe Biden. So Dana Bash said, you were a big defender of Joe Biden. You said he was healthy. You said everything was fine, hunky-dory, better than great. He was awesome. Do you have any regrets about that? And she doubled down. She said, no regrets about that. He's intelligent. He's smart. He's with it. He's the kind of person you want to be president. Now, this is where Dana Bash's sycophancy is a sin. This is where her being a kiss ass is a real sin. She should have said back to Kamala Harris, okay, you say that he's smart and he's healthy and he's with it. So why did he drop out? Do you want him to get back in? Do you think that he should get back in? Like, why shouldn't he? Did you win any primary votes? That's where she should have pressed. And presumably Donald Trump will have to press her on that if given the opportunity during the debate on September 10th. But Dana Bash, really let her off the hook on that one. Again, her lying to the American people for years about the health status of Joe Biden is really a major issue that has not been tapped yet. Because most Americans think that she was lying and that everyone was lying. But we didn't get a lot of talk about that. We got a lot of talk about how she was serving out bacon to her little nieces or something when she got the news from Joe Biden. So that answer is not going to be particularly helpful to her. The rest of it was basically just a mashup of platitudes and nonsense and her talking about the significance of time. She actually did that again. One of her favorite crutches is when we talk about the significance of, that is her stalling for time. It's her crutch. She doesn't have anything to say, so she starts talking about the significance of the thing that she knows nothing about. So she's asked about climate change, and she'll start talking about the significance of climate change. Well, that wasn't the question. The question is, what's your policy? Or she's asked, first of all, I don't understand how there are no questions about her tax policy. She's literally proposing a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains, which is insane. How is there no question? I mean, Dana Bash betrayed her profession tonight. She really did. Horrifyingly bad job. Now, Tim Walz, again, he was just kind of there as backup, I guess. It was super weird. He sat there silently for nearly the entire interview. He was brought in near the end to talk about how proud he was of his son. That's fine. He was asked some questions about the fact that he has lied about his DUI back in 1995, about his military service, about his wife's IVF, that he's lied about all of these things. And he said something about how, well, you know, you mess up when you talk a lot. He should have just said, listen, if I make mistakes, I try to correct them, which is not true, by the way. He certainly does not. He said something about how he screwed up the grammar, but people will give him... Is any of this going to really ding Tim Walz in a serious way? I seriously doubt it. Also, the VP candidate just doesn't matter all that much. Suffice it to say his answers were not brilliant. I don't think they did him any sort of serious damage. But it was weird to have him there. Like, he shouldn't have been there at all. And it made Kamala Harris look a little bit minor league. And why is she doing that? Now, one point I will hand to Kamala Harris. Her campaign is smart enough to recognize that she should not steer into the racial identitarianism. She was asked twice racially identitarian questions by Dana Bash. She was asked about Donald Trump and his talk about whether she was truly black or not, and she completely ignored that question. She just said, he does that all the time. Next question. That is a smart answer. It is. It's an actual smart answer by Kamala Harris. Then later on, she was asked about this ridiculous photograph that for some reason Democrats love. I mean, I get why, because she looks like an authoritarian dictator in it. I mean, she's like up against a white backdrop or against a lit backdrop, and there's a little girl who's profiled from behind, gazing glowingly up and worshipfully up at Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is asked about first woman, first black woman, all this kind of stuff. And she gives I'm just here to be the good president. That's a good answer. That is a good answer. But those were the sole bright spots. The rest of it was just argle-bargle. It was just nonsense. The thing is that our standards have been set so unbelievably low in presidential politics that if she didn't physically crap herself in the middle of the interview, it was a massive improvement over Joe Biden. And, you know, her kind of wandering all over the landscape in search of an idea, not a great shock. Of course, we've been here before. So, like on a scale of 1 to 10, was this like a true car crash? Again, in any normal circumstance, it's a car crash. Is this a true car crash for Kamala? Like, is it going to do serious damage to her campaign? No. Is it going to grow her audience? Is it going to make people feel super comfortable with her? Also no. So did it move the ball forward for her? Well, I mean, I suppose that it quieted the criticism that she doesn't take questions or something for like a moment. But that's not going to go away. If this is the only interview that she does from now until the debate, everyone is going to go right back to, you booked a softball interview in which you were interviewed for like 7 seconds by Dana Bash. And then you went back hiding on the campaign trail. So is it going to quiet those critiques? I think not. Do I think this actually changed much? I don't. Do I think it exposes why they will not let her in front of cameras for love or money if they can help it without a teleprompter? Absolutely. Kamala Harris is truly bad at this. Reminder, we bring you these updates all throughout the campaign. Once again, you're going to want to go over to dailywire.com/subscribe, become a member, help us, help you. Use code LABOR40 and get 40% off for your Labor Day sale this weekend. Go check it out right now, dailywire.com/subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow with the entire recap of everything in detail, plus all of the controversy surrounding Donald Trump and abortion. He opened a bit of a can of worms today. We'll get into that tomorrow. We'll see you then. Alrighty, folks. So Kamala Harris just completed her interview with Bret Baier on Fox News, and it was, as advertised, a complete bleep show. By the way, if you like these reacts, if you want to see these things continue to happen in real time, we do need your help. You need to go subscribe, dailywire.com/subscribe. When you use code REACT, you get 35% off. We're going to keep bringing you these updates, not only in the election season, but well past that. So dailywire.com/subscribe, 35% off with code REACT. Okay, so on to the news. Kamala Harris, wow. I thought it was not going to be great. I did not think it was going to be that not great. So listen, Kamala Harris has been avoiding difficult interviews this entire election cycle. The most difficult interview she did was with Bill Whitaker, and 60 Minutes chopped it up to make her look better. That did not happen with Bret Baier, and it was a full-scale disaster area for her. So he opened right off the bat by asking her about illegal immigration. He said, how many illegal immigrants have been let into the country under you? And she immediately swivels. She will not answer the question. She won't just say, listen, we blew it at the beginning. We reversed Donald Trump's executive orders. We got it right now. We understand the problem. That's Joe. That's not me. Right? That's the actual real answer. But she can't do that because she also wants to say that she owns it, that she was involved in every decision. Later on in this interview, by the way, she would be talking about Donald Trump, and she would suggest you have to own everything your administration did. Well, lady, that's going to be a campaign ad because it turns out people do not like what you have done. In fact, Bret Baier asked her, you keep saying, you're going to turn the page. So Bret Baier's like, from what? You're the current vice president of the United States. You realize Americans, 79% of them, don't like the direction of the country. You're the current incumbent. And she said, well, yes, but Donald Trump has been running. He said, well, yeah, but you're the current vice president of the United States of America. What the hell does Donald Trump running have to do with anything? No answer from her. He asked about Laken Riley and other people slain by illegal immigrants, and she tried to blame that on the failure to pass a border bill in 2023. Okay, but the problem is that the illegal immigrants who were let in well before that border bill was even proposed to Congress. So it makes no sense whatsoever. He asked her about whether she would still be in favor of transgender surgeries for illegal immigrants and federal inmates. And she said, I will abide by the law. That's not an answer. That's you saying yes. That's you saying that you still would use taxpayer dollars to pay for all of those things. He asked her about the fact that she has been covering for Joe Biden's senility for 3.5 years. And instead of answering, she says, no, I've been in the room with him. I've been there the whole time. He's great. And by the way, he's not on the ticket. And Baier follows up. He's like, yes, but we can all see he's diminished. That's the reason you're here. And she refuses once again to answer the question. Man, she looked bad. She looked absolutely awful. She looked contentious. She looked angry at Bret Baier for having the temerity to ask her any sort of serious question. She's got to be super ticked at her team for suggesting that she do Bret Baier in the first place. And she's unwilling or unable to answer any question about policy at all in this election cycle. The only thing she's got, and everybody knows it, is Trumpy Trump, McTrump. But here is the problem. The minute you dig below the surface, what you realize is that she is an empty vessel for the entire Biden administration agenda. And she's not particularly smart. She doesn't know her own policies well enough to make cogent and interesting distinctions about how her policies work. She doesn't understand how to defend the policies that she has herself put into place. She tried to suggest that she'd be tougher on Iran than Donald Trump. I mean, like, these things make no sense whatsoever. And the biggest thing that rolled off of her was enormous disdain for having to be there. That was the thing that rolled off of her in waves. So much of these interviews, it's true for debate also, so much of it is sort of the attitude you bring to it. And the reason that J.D. Vance did really well in the vice presidential debate is because he didn't come in hot and aggressive and angry. He came in and he was sort of open body language and accepting the terms of the debate. And yeah, he pushed back here and there, but he was really kind of kind and generous during the debate. That was the mistake that Donald Trump made in 2020 against Joe Biden. It was all a problem of affect. He came in super hot, really aggressive. Okay, so Kamala Harris sits down with Bret Baier, and instead of being friendly and saying, listen, Bret, we have some statistics that suggest that, say, 6 million illegal immigrants have entered the country. It is our job to do a better job of that on the border. That was a mistake that Joe Biden made when he came into office. We were optimistic about what could happen with the border. We thought a bill would get passed quickly. Obviously, that wasn't true. And we were delayed. We were belated in actually doing the things that we should have done by closing the border back up. We're doing it now. I promise to do that going forward. That's the best answer, obviously. But she can't give that answer, and she refuses to give that answer. And she gets angry when she's asked. That's the thing. She's really angry about having to run a race. That's the part that's amazing. She is ticked at having to run this thing. Why? Well, because literally every job that she's ever had, with the exception of the DA job, which she won a race against Steve Cooley in California, has been handed to her on a silver platter. Kamala Harris has always been the sort of fair-haired child when it comes to people just handing her things. Hell, she was handed the vice presidency after running the worst presidential campaign in modern American history. I mean, the list of gaffes in this interview is almost endless. Again, she suggests that Joe Biden is totally fine. At one point, Bret Baier has to openly say, your handlers want me to stop this interview. Like, they really want you to stop this interview. She again, is unable to simply, to explain even why she's not responsible for what Joe Biden is doing. And so you have to wonder, where does she go from here? Seriously, where does she go? If this is the best she can do against Bret Baier, and you see, the Democrats are going to try and spin this as though she was cogent and interesting. She faced down a brutal grilling, a really hard interviewer, and now she's brave. Okay, well, points for bravery, I suppose. Bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it does for you. If the idea is doing this and then doing Joe Rogan for 3 hours, when she is asked a point-blank question, she cannot answer the question. She simply cannot. She cannot defend her own policies. The only line of attack she has is just saying Trump and Trump and Trump again. That's really the only line of attack any Kamala Harris defenders have at this point. I really don't think that's going to be enough, because it turns out that in order to vote against Donald Trump or to show up to vote in favor of Kamala Harris, she's going to have to show something beyond a radical, sneering disdain for anyone who has questions about why the hell she's here and what she will do as president of the United States.